When my dad raised his wine glass and said, "We all agreed you'd pay for Christmas this year, you've got no kids," I laughed. But I wasn't joking when I said, "Then you'll love what happens next." The next 48 hours? A family meltdown no one saw coming. The dining room glowed with warm golden light, reflecting off garlands strung delicately across the ceiling beams. Snow pressed gently against the windows, muffling the outside world, as the family laughed and passed plates of roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, and cranberry sauce. Julian sat at the far end of the long table, smiling quietly, his wine untouched. His younger siblings chatted over each other, kids ran under the table, and his mother beamed, cheeks flushed with holiday joy. Everything shimmered with a kind of Norman Rockwell perfection, until the truth unraveled with the lightness of a napkin falling to the floor. It began innocently. His niece, Lucy, perhaps 8, held up her new digital camera with delight. "Thanks for the Christmas gift, Uncle Julian," she said. Julian blinked. He hadn't bought her anything. More thank yous followed. A drone, a tablet, noise-canceling headphones, all addressed to him with the pure gratitude only children can give. A strange silence gathered in Julian's chest, as if his breath had stopped to listen. He leaned toward his mother. "Mom? Did you use the card?" She looked up, hesitated. "Only a little, dear. Just for the children." Julian's father didn't miss a beat. "We voted," he said, slicing a piece of ham with surgical precision. "You don't have kids. It's only fair." Julian's face stayed neutral, but something inside cracked with quiet grace. "I gave you that card for emergencies." "And this was one," his father replied, cheerful. "You make more than all of us combined. It's just redistribution." Around the table, forks kept moving, the hum of family resumed, but for Julian, the air changed. The warmth turned oddly distant, as if he were a guest in his own home, expected to pay for the meal. He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, looked down at his plate. Outside, snowflakes swirled past the window like silent applause for a moment no one but him seemed to feel. Julian sat motionless, the laughter around him echoing as if from another room. The festive clatter of silverware, the clinking of glasses, the hum of easy conversation, all suddenly sounded warped, distant, like an old radio detuning from a familiar frequency. He turned slightly, searching for an ally. A glance, a word, anything. But no one met his eyes. Across the table, Dana, his younger sister, always sharp, always too quick to speak, let out a laugh that cut through the room. It wasn't joyful. It was something else. Something that stung. "Oh, come on," she said, swirling her wine. "You make more money in a month than some people do in a year. Who do you even live for, Jules? Yourself? What's the big deal?" He stared at her. "That's not the point." Dana shrugged, leaned back in her chair. "Isn't it, though?" His mother, sitting quietly beside his father, didn't look up. She pressed her napkin into her lap and traced circles on the rim of her plate with her fork, as if hoping to disappear into the pattern of the china. No one said a word in his defense. Not one. Julian felt the weight of years, the college tuition he helped cover for Dana, the surprise vacations he funded for their parents' anniversaries, the quiet way he always said yes when someone needed help but no one ever asked if he needed anything in return. His voice, when it finally came, was low. That laughter, it was the sound of years of taking me for granted finally screaming in my face. No one heard him. Or maybe they did, but pretended not to. His chest ached, not with rage, but with a deep, gnawing loneliness. A sense that he had been playing the role of good son for so long that they'd forgotten he was a person beneath it. And as they went on eating, talking, laughing, he realized he wasn't at his family's table. He was on the outside of it, looking in. The sound of laughter faded into the background like a radio left on in an empty room. Julian's eyes drifted to the flickering candle in the center of the table. The flame wavered, soft and silent, the only thing in the room that felt honest. His thoughts pulled him inward, back through the years. He remembered when his cousin Leo had called in a panic, voice shaking, terrified he'd have to drop out of school. Julian stayed up all night helping him set up an online shop, even paid for the domain and first batch of inventory. Leo never mentioned it again, except to ask for more funding 6 months later. He thought of Uncle Raymond, silent in the hospital bed, and how Julian had quietly handled the bills when insurance fell short. His aunt had cried at the time, but not for him, not for his generosity. She cried out of relief. And then they never spoke of it again. And Dana. He could still feel the cold panic in his chest the night she called after the accident, her voice trembling, rain falling hard against her windshield, her sobs barely intelligible. The next morning, he wired the money for a new car without hesitation. She sent a thumbs-up emoji. No thank you. No call. Just expectation. And when months later, he hesitated to co-sign a loan for her startup, she snapped, "You're unbelievable. It's just money to you, right? What do you even do with it?" That word, unbelievable, had haunted him more than he cared to admit. As if not giving were some breach of character. As if love, in this family, was something to be measured by dollar signs. In that moment, the truth settled on him like snowfall. He had never been seen for who he was. Only for what he gave. Not a brother. Not a son. Not a cousin. Just a wallet with legs. A warm, smiling, self-replenishing machine. And if he ever said no, if he ever dared to put himself first, he wasn't just selfish. He was unlovable. That night, the house slept under the illusion of peace, soft breaths behind closed doors, the scent of pine still lingering from the tree in the living room, and distant wind brushing gently against the windows. But in the guest room, Julian lay wide awake, his body still but his mind burning like a slow, controlled fire. He stared at the ceiling, the lines in the plaster blurring as tears welled quietly in his eyes, not from weakness, but from years of swallowing hurt in silence. 100 moments flickered through him, Dana laughing as if his value was only measured by his income, his father's offhand dismissal, the way his mother couldn't even meet his eyes. How long had he traded himself for their approval? How many pieces of his heart had he handed out like candy, only to be forgotten the moment the sweetness faded? He had confused generosity with love. And they had taken full advantage. Julian sat up slowly, feeling the cold of the floor on his feet. It grounded him, reminded him that he was still here. Still breathing. Still able to choose. At 3:12 a.m., he opened his laptop. The cursor blinked in the subject line like a heartbeat. Subject: change in financial support effective immediately. He hesitated only for a moment before writing. Dear family, after years of offering support, emotional, financial, and otherwise, I've come to the painful realization that what I intended as love has often been met with entitlement. Starting today, I am halting all financial contributions, reimbursements, and informal agreements. I will also begin the process of requesting repayment for select past sums. Legal counsel will be involved moving forward. This is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of self-preservation. I hope you understand. But even if you don't, it's time I finally do. He reread the message. His hands trembled. He hit send. And for the first time in years, Julian felt something unexpected. Not guilt, not fear, but the distant, fragile echo of peace. By the time the winter sun had barely broken through the clouds, Julian's phone was already vibrating violently on the nightstand, an angry, metallic hum that seemed to echo the fury spilling from his inbox. 47 missed calls. He scrolled through the names: Dad, Dana, Uncle Pete, Mom, X8, even cousins he hadn't spoken to in months. And then came the texts, not questions, not concern, but accusations wrapped in the language of guilt. Mom, you're hurting everyone. Is this how you want to spend Christmas? Dad, we're family, Julian. Don't let money ruin what we have. Dana, well, so you really are that selfish. I knew it. Not one message asked how he was. Not one voice wondered what brought him to this decision. He stood by the window, phone still in hand, watching the soft flurry of snow begin to fall. A child across the street ran out in mismatched mittens to catch snowflakes, laughter trailing behind like breath in the cold air. Julian closed his eyes. There was a time when any one of those messages would have sent him spiraling, rushing to apologize, to smooth things over, to rescue people from feelings they refused to manage themselves. But not this time. For the first time, he didn't feel guilt clawing at his throat. He felt still, quiet. It wasn't joy, exactly. It wasn't triumph. But it was something that tasted like truth. Like finally putting down a heavy bag you didn't realize you'd been carrying for years. His chest rose with a slow inhale, and as he exhaled, he placed the phone down, face down, and stepped away. He didn't need to read the rest of the messages. He already knew what they'd say, what they'd demand. But he also knew, deep in the softest part of himself, that love, real love, doesn't come with a receipt. And family, if it really is family, shouldn't fall apart the moment you stop paying for it. The doorbell rang at 9:13 a.m. Urgent, like it had something to prove. Julian already knew who it was. There had been no warning, no text, just silence after the flurry of outrage. The kind of silence that precedes a storm. He opened the door to find them standing on the porch. His father, rigid in a wool coat too thin for the cold. His mother, eyes red-rimmed but mouth firm. And Dana, arms crossed, jaw clenched like she was biting down rage. "Can we come in?" his mother asked, her voice almost tender. Julian didn't move. "What do you want?" "We just want to talk," Dana said, stepping forward. "Clear the air. This whole thing is getting blown out of proportion." Julian let out a short breath, not quite a laugh. "Blown out of proportion? You used my money without asking. Then called me selfish when I said enough." His father's eyes narrowed. "You're twisting things. We've always leaned on each other. That's what family does." "No," Julian said quietly. "Family listens. Family respects boundaries. What you've done, that's not love. That's entitlement." Dana scoffed. "You're being dramatic. You make 6 figures. What's a few extra gifts?" Julian's tone was even, but his voice carried the weight of years. "It's not about the money. It's about how none of you see me. Not as a son. Not as a brother. Just a wallet that talks." His mother flinched. His father stepped forward, voice low and sharp. "People will say you turned your back on your own blood." Julian held his gaze. "Let them. I'd rather be seen as a traitor than live one more day as your victim." For a long moment, no one said anything. The winter air bit into their skin, and the silence finally felt honest. Julian gently closed the door, not with anger, but finality. On the other side, voices rose again, muffled. But inside it was still. For the first time, Julian realized, peace doesn't come from being accepted. It comes from accepting that you don't need to beg for it anymore. That Sunday afternoon, the sky had a softness to it, overcast, but not unkind. Julian had just poured a second cup of coffee when the knock came. It was gentler than the last time. Hesitant. Almost human. He opened the door to find Jason standing there, hands deep in the pockets of a clean navy jacket, hair neatly combed, eyes avoiding his. It had been months, maybe a year, since they'd last spoken more than a few words. The childhood cousin. The one who used to build forts with him in their grandmother's backyard. The only one who ever used to call just to talk. "Hey," Jason said. I know I should have called. I just wanted to talk. In person." Julian let him in. Not because he trusted him, but because some part of him still wanted to. They sat at the kitchen table, 2 mugs between them, silence padding the space like an old memory. Jason looked thinner, older, but there was a nervous energy to him, like he was holding something back. "I messed up," Jason said finally. "A lot. I know I took advantage of you before. I let the family talk me into it. I was weak." Julian didn't interrupt. "I enrolled back in school," Jason continued, pulling out a folded schedule from his coat. "Community college. IT support. I'm trying to start over. I'm not here to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know. I'm sorry. Really sorry." For a second, a fragile, treacherous second, Julian felt something inside him soften. Maybe this was it. A sliver of reconciliation. A person choosing better. But his phone buzzed. A notification. From his bank. Unusual activity. Attempt to reset password from new device. His heart sank. He opened the app. The attempt was made with recovery questions only Jason would know. He looked up slowly, meeting Jason's eyes. They flickered. Guilt. Or was it just fear? Julian stood. His voice was quiet but firm. You didn't come here to apologize. You came here to take. Jason stammered. No, I didn't mean. Julian opened the door. This time, he didn't even wait for the goodbye. That night, Julian sat at his desk, the soft glow of his laptop lighting up the quiet room. Outside, the city hummed like it always did, unaware of the storm quietly unraveling in his chest. His cursor hovered over the final bank setting, unlink all external users. One click. Then another. He reset every password, deactivated every auto-transfer, and locked down his life like a vault, finally protecting something sacred, himself. There was no dramatic music. No great applause. Just a strange, still silence. And then a deep breath. One that felt like his first in years. He packed slowly the next morning, not in a frenzy, but with a kind of reverence. His lease was almost up anyway. A friend in Portland had offered him a spare room. Julian never used to say yes to those things. But now, the idea of starting over somewhere with no ghosts felt less like running, and more like arriving. And then the unexpected. A message pinged in his inbox, unfamiliar sender. He almost ignored it. Subject, thank you. From Claire Mendoza, Jason's wife. Julian, I know we've never spoken, not really. But I saw what happened. I saw how he used you. And I saw how you said no. I needed to see someone say no. I'm leaving too. I've stayed quiet for so long I forgot I had a voice. But your silence woke mine. Thank you for showing me that saying no can be a kind of love, the hardest kind, but maybe the realest. Julian read the message twice. 3 times. And then something inside him, something buried beneath years of disappointment and guilt, began to shift. He looked around his empty apartment, now stripped down to just a few boxes and a heart finally uncluttered. He wasn't just leaving the state. He was leaving a role he never chose, shedding a version of himself that only ever existed to please others. He smiled, small and quiet. Maybe saying no wasn't the end of something. Maybe it was the beginning. The new city didn't greet Julian with fireworks. It didn't need to. It welcomed him with something far rarer, stillness. His new apartment was modest. A 3rd-floor walk-up with squeaky floors, white curtains, and light that slanted in through the windows like poetry. There was a small cafe on the corner that remembered his name by the 3rd visit. A park 2 blocks away where the world moved just slow enough for his thoughts to catch up. No knocks at the door asking for a small loan. No frantic messages labeled urgent. No veiled guilt masquerading as family. Just the low hum of morning jazz on his speaker, the hiss of a mocha pot on the stove, and the soft, delicious sound of nothing being expected of him. He found his rhythm, gentle, deliberate. Cooking for one. Reading again. Sleeping deeply. Waking up without a knot in his stomach. There were no dramatic revelations, just small, kind moments that stitched his sense of self back together. One afternoon, as he scrolled through old photos and muted conversations, he came across the family group chat, the same thread where years of obligations had once gathered like mold. He stared at the group's title for a long moment. Family Red Heart, Christmas Tree. Then, with a calm hand, he renamed it. This account is closed. Try love instead of withdrawal. No rage. No explanation. Just truth. He tapped Leave Group. The silence afterward felt holy. In that quiet, Julian didn't feel lonely. He felt whole. He understood now that protecting your peace sometimes means disappointing people who were never interested in truly knowing you, only in using you. He stood by the window, coffee in hand, watching strangers pass beneath the golden late afternoon sun. Not one of them expected anything from him. And for the first time in a long, long time, he didn't either. No apologies. No guilt. Just a man, in a small apartment, living softly in a world he was finally building for himself. It wasn't a grand finale. It was something better. A beginning. The soft glow of evening settled over Julian's quiet apartment as he settled into his chair, the weight of the past months gently lifting. He looked out the window, watching the city pulse with life, distant laughter, footsteps, the hum of cars, a world moving on, indifferent yet inviting. He spoke softly, as if sharing a secret meant only for himself, but also for anyone who might need to hear it. Choosing yourself, it's not selfish. It's survival. It's love, the kind of love that doesn't demand you vanish, disappear, or dissolve into someone else's needs. He paused, letting the words breathe, the room filling with their quiet truth. Setting boundaries isn't about building walls. It's about creating a space where respect and care can actually grow. When a relationship only exists because you're paying for it, with your money, your time, your heart, that's not family. That's a transaction disguised as affection. Julian's eyes softened, a faint smile touching his lips. For years, I thought love was about sacrifice, about giving until there was nothing left. But real family, real love, it lifts you up. It sees you. It holds space for who you are, not just what you can give. He glanced down at his hands, steady now, no longer trembling with the weight of expectations. Tonight, I realize I didn't lose my family. I escaped from those who never truly were. His smile grew a little wider, not from triumph, but from peace. I'm free now. Free to love myself first. And in that freedom, maybe, just maybe, I can learn what it means to belong, not because I give, but because I am. The quiet room held his words like a gentle embrace, a final truth spoken softly, clearly. Sometimes, letting go isn't losing. It's coming home, to yourself. If you've ever felt like Julian, valued only for what you give, not who you are, please share your story in the comments. You're not alone. Don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt stories about family, love, and the courage it takes to truly live for yourself. Your voice matters.